Syd Barrett, the brilliant, eccentric founder of Pink Floyd, remains one of the most mysterious figures in rock history. He burned brighter and faster than almost anyone, creating a new sound, a new language for rock music, and then vanishing into silence. His story is one of genius and madness, of imagination and isolation, the tale of a young visionary who changed music forever, and paid the price for it. Roger Keith Syd Barrett was born in Cambridge, England, on January 6, 1946. He grew up in a home filled with warmth, art, and music. His father, Max Barrett, was a pathologist and a gentle intellectual. His mother, Winifred, encouraged her children's creativity. From an early age, Syd showed a fascination with both painting and sound. He'd sit for hours drawing strange, whimsical scenes, the same kind of surreal imagery that would later pour out in his lyrics. Cambridge in the 1950s was a curious place, a mix of academic tradition and post-war bohemia. Young Syd absorbed it all. He listened to jazz, classical music, and then the wild, rebellious sounds of American rock and roll. Elvis Presley, Buddy Holly, and Little Richard opened a new world to him, raw, electrifying, alive. By his teens, Syd was experimenting with homemade guitars and forming bands with friends. At Cambridgeshire High School for Boys, he met a young Roger Waters, another Cambridge kid with a restless mind. Alongside Richard Wright and Clive Metcalfe, they started playing small gigs under names like the T-Set and Sigma 6. Their early sets were mostly covers, skiffle and rock and roll standards, but Barrett's songwriting instincts quickly began to surface. By 1965, Syd took over as the creative leader and renamed the group the Pink Floyd Sound. The name came from two blues musicians, Pink Anderson and Floyd Council, a nod to his deep love for old American music. Soon, they dropped the sound and became simply Pink Floyd. At the time, London's underground scene was exploding. Psychedelia was everywhere, light shows, experimental art, and the growing influence of LSD. Syd Barrett dove headfirst into it. His songs were dreamlike, filled with strange characters and surreal imagery, gnomes, bikes, cats, stars, and mirrors. They were whimsical on the surface but deeply imaginative underneath, reflections of a mind seeing the world in shapes and colors no one else could. Under Barrett's leadership, Pink Floyd became one of the most experimental live acts in London. Their performances were chaotic, hypnotic, and completely unpredictable. Long, improvised jams mixed with flickering light shows and waves of distorted sound. Audiences didn't just hear Pink Floyd, they experienced them. Syd's guitar playing was unlike anyone else's. He used echo and feedback to create textures that felt otherworldly. He'd slide metal objects across the strings, use tape loops, and twist his amp's knobs mid-performance to bend sound in impossible ways. To the audiences of 1966, this wasn't rock, it was something entirely new. In 1967, Pink Floyd signed with EMI Records, and their first single, Arnold Lane, hit the UK charts. It was a strange song, about a man stealing women's clothes from washing lines, but people loved it. It was witty, catchy, and just unsettling enough to stand out from everything else on the radio. A few months later, they released See Emily Play, a dazzling piece of psychedelic pop that climbed even higher on the charts. Then came the masterpiece, The Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Recorded at Abbey Road Studios at the same time the Beatles were working on Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, it captured the spirit of London's psychedelic era better than any album before or since. Every track, from Lucifer Sam and Bike to the cosmic opener Astronomy Domini, was soaked in Barrett's imagination. His lyrics were a strange mix of children's stories, fairy tales, and science fiction, playful, poetic, and haunting all at once. Critics hailed Barrett as a genius. Fans saw him as a new kind of rock star, not a swaggering rebel, but a visionary artist. He was charming, funny, and unpredictable. But behind the wide grin and colorful clothes, something darker was brewing. By late 1967, the signs were there. Barrett's LSD use had become constant. He would disappear for days, forget lyrics on stage, and drift in and out of conversations as if he were somewhere else entirely. Sometimes, he wouldn't play at all, just stare into space while the rest of the band kept going. The man who had once led Pink Floyd into the light was slowly slipping away into the shadows of his mind. The pressures of fame didn't help. EMI wanted more hits. Managers wanted more tours. Reporters wanted more interviews. But Syd was unraveling. He began showing signs of severe mental illness, later believed to be schizophrenia, made far worse by the hallucinogens that had once fueled his creativity. In early 1968, Pink Floyd made the hardest decision of their careers. They quietly brought in David Gilmour, a childhood friend from Cambridge, to cover for Syd during live shows. At first, they planned to keep Syd on as a songwriter. But his condition worsened. One day, on the way to a gig, someone in the band asked, "Should we pick up Syd?" The silence that followed was the end. They didn't pick him up. Syd Barrett was no longer in Pink Floyd. After leaving the band, Syd tried to keep making music. He recorded 2 solo albums, the Madcap Laughs and Barrett, both released in 1970. They're raw, fragile, and painfully intimate. Songs drift in and out of rhythm, his voice trembles, and yet the emotion is undeniable. Listening to them feels like eavesdropping on a genius whose mind is crumbling in real time. After those albums, Syd disappeared from public life altogether. He moved back to Cambridge to live with his mother. He painted, gardened, and lived quietly, avoiding the spotlight that once burned so brightly on him. Neighbors said he seemed content, others said he was lost in his own world. He no longer answered to Syd. He was Roger again. But Pink Floyd never forgot. In 1975, they released Wish You Were Here, an album drenched in longing and regret. The centerpiece, Shine On You Crazy Diamond, was a direct tribute to Syd. Halfway through recording, an overweight, bald man wandered into the studio, quietly watching them work. It took the band a moment to realize who it was. It was Syd. He stayed for a while, then left without saying goodbye. They never saw him again. Syd Barrett spent the rest of his life in peace and obscurity, cared for by his family, painting and writing until his death in 2006 at the age of 60. His influence, however, never faded. David Bowie called him one of his greatest inspirations. Brian Eno said Barrett showed how to make pop music strange again. The Cure's Robert Smith, REM, and countless others have cited him as a guiding light. Syd Barrett was more than a musician, he was an idea. An artist who believed that sound could be as fluid and limitless as thought itself. He taught a generation that music didn't have to follow rules, it could drift, melt, and dream. His story is tragic, yes, but it's also beautiful. Because even though he disappeared, the echo of his creativity still rings through time. Every shimmering chord, every surreal lyric, every moment Pink Floyd pushed the boundaries of music, it all began with him. Syd Barrett remains one of rock's purest enigmas, a visionary who redefined what music could be, and then slipped away before it could destroy him completely. His voice, his imagery, his madness, they still echo in every chord that dares to sound different. Shine on, you crazy diamond.